Hey guys, today I'm going to be going over the basics of hand building. There are three main methods of construction when it comes to ceramics, and that would be pinching, slab building, and building with coils, also known as coiling. So before I can do any of this stuff, there is one important step that always needs to happen when I get my clay, and that's called wedging. Wedging is essentially kneading the dough, and I'm getting all the air pockets, cracks, and inconsistencies out of the clay. And so I'm gonna wedge this at least 10 times using this part of my hand, pushing down and forward, picking up and rocking it. I'm gonna do this at least 10 times. I'm probably gonna go 15 because I don't wanna mess it up in this video. But really, you know, the more you wedge, especially when you're throwing, the better. You wanna get rid of any issues. Okay, so the first one we're gonna talk about is pinching. Okay, so I've got my wedged clay, and here's a finished pinch pot. Okay, it's just like a little bowl. You can make all sorts of forms with this. If you were making a sculpture, like if I wanted to make a head of an animal, this would be the best way to hollow that out. The other way you would do that is by taking a loop tool and like scooping it out, and that would just take forever, and also you'd probably not be able to get it as even. So I'm gonna take this clay, and I'm going to have my hand shaped like a cup. I'm just gonna kinda, like a baseball, I'm gonna kinda like pat it back and forth. And I'm just patting this ball. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, this is fine. There's no major cracks, but there's, you know, a couple inconsistencies there. Alrighty, I got my ball of clay. My next step to make a pinch pot is to take your thumb and to press that into the clay, okay, not all the way through, because then you wouldn't have a bottom to your bowl. You would just have a hole through it. So I'm not going all the way through, okay, it's just kind of hanging out there. And then I'm gonna have my thumb on the inside and my 2 fingers, or you can use more. I think it's best when you're first learning just to use 2, because it's hard to know the width of how thick something is with all 4 of your fingers. Okay, so if you just use these 2, you can really kind of feel how thick it is between your thumb on the inside and then these fingers on the outside. And I'm just going to pinch and rotate, okay? Just gonna kind of keep pinch, pinch, pinch. And I don't have to press it as hard as I can right now. Okay, I'm taking my time. I'm trying to apply even pressure as I go throughout my form, and I rotate it, okay? Now, you'll notice that the top is gonna start to thin out pretty quick, but the bottom, on the other hand, is gonna stay really thick. So I'm gonna focus my efforts down here on this bottom corner, okay? So if this was how it was sitting, right down here, that's where it's gonna be thickest. And so I'm just gonna keep pinching and pinching. Now, some of you, when you start to do this, you might notice that your bowl gets really wide, okay? And that's because you're pinching like this. See how my thumb is kind of pushing outward? Okay, so that makes a really wide bowl, okay? But if I wanna have a pinch pot that's a little taller, like this one, then I'm gonna kind of pinch up, okay? So, sorry, I'm trying to show you here with a different angle or two. Okay, I'm pinching up, not pinching out, okay? Depends on what you're trying to make and how wide you want your project to be. Change the direction of your hand, okay? So if I wanna make it tall, pinch up. If I wanna make it wide, pinch out, okay? Now I'm gonna keep doing this until I get to the ideal thickness of clay, which in my class is 1/4 of an inch, okay? And if you don't know what 1/4 of an inch is, I always talk about the pinky rule, okay? The tip of your pinky should be about 1/4 of an inch, give or take. Also, a pencil or a loop tool, because you'll always have these items handy. This is about the ideal thickness. So let's look at the one I made earlier. I'm gonna hold this up, and it should be about as thick as that wall is, okay? If it's way thicker, then we need to keep working. Now, it's easy to tell how thick it is up here on the top because you can see it. But what about down here? How do I find out how thick it is down here? In that case, I'm gonna do what's called the needle test, okay? And you have a needle tool or a wooden stick that I gave you in your toolkit to cut with, okay? Or you can use, you know, whatever you have at home. A toothpick would work just fine. And I'm going to stick it through this corner, okay? So I'm coming in on the inside, and I'm gonna keep poking it until I see it, okay? So now I'm gonna back it back down, okay? And right there, I'm gonna stop my finger, and I'm gonna take my right hand, or left, depends on what the other hand, how about that? And I'm going to pinch right where the needle tool is and where it's touching the clay, okay? So I'm gonna put my finger like right there, and I'm gonna hold on to the needle tool. I'm gonna pull it out, okay? And that's gonna show me how thick it is. So that is about 1/4 of an inch. It's a little thick, so I might pinch a smidge more. If it was like this thick, okay, then I would really need to keep pinching to make sure that it's 1/4 of an inch, because otherwise it'll explode in the kiln later on. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep working on that corner. And again, it's always usually that corner that's thickest. It's hard to tell. All right, so that's a pinch pot, okay, pinching. The next method we're gonna talk about is called slab building, okay? And slab is essentially just a flat piece of clay. Think of like making a gingerbread house at home at Christmas. You've probably taken something like some cookies, you use the icing, and you put them together. We're essentially doing that exact same concept, but with clay. All right, so I'm gonna take this clay, I'm gonna wedge it back up. I'm gonna wedge it at least 10 times, but probably more. That's just the minimum that you could probably skate by on. Professional potters watching this video are probably like, no, she's wrong. Yeah, well, I teach high school, so. All right, so I've got my clay wedged. So here is a project that's made with slabs. And this is actually bisqued pottery. So this has been fired 1 time. So the clay will turn white, okay? And then the red clay will kind of turn this like orange color. And so if you look on the inside, okay, so they took 1, 2, 3, 4 slab pieces and put them together. All right, so to use this to make a slab, you're gonna need a rolling pin or a rolling rod, is what I sent home in your toolkit, okay? And I always like to stand when I'm doing my pottery. It's just my thing because you can always use your weight, okay? It's a lot harder to sit here and do it this way. So I'm standing on top of it, and notice how I'm not like really holding on to the rolling pin. I'm kind of just letting it roll back and forth with my hands. So I'm rolling this. I'm gonna pick it up and flip it. That's one important thing to know, is wet sticks to wet. So as I keep working in the same area, it's getting saturated with water and the clay might start to stick. So anytime you're working on a project, every once in a while, just pick it up and move it, flip it, so that way it doesn't get stuck, okay? Because it does happen and it does stink when it does. All right, see how it just kind of folded up on me? Okay, that's happening because my rolling pin is also getting a little wet. So every once in a while, you know, if you've been really working on something, you might have to let the rolling pin dry for a couple minutes, okay? But if you move stuff quick enough, it should be okay. All right, now notice I didn't really dig in, okay? I'm just kind of lightly rolling it back and forth because I want it to be nice and even, the same thickness all the way through. All right, so this is about 1/4 of an inch. Really, it's kind of thinner, okay? If you get it too thin, it's gonna be really breakable and it's gonna be hard to work with. So don't go too thin, but also make sure it's never thicker than your pinky or a pencil, the 1/4 of an inch trick, okay? All right, so once I have my slab, I'm then gonna take that wooden stick or needle tool, depending on what you have at home, whatever tool kit you got, and I'm just gonna cut out a little shape. And I'm actually gonna cut out 2 shapes because I'm gonna talk to you about slipping and scoring. All right, so here's my clay. I'm gonna put it back into a ball. It's still good clay. I just have to wedge it. And here's my 2 pieces I cut, okay? They're not perfect. This is okay, we're just practicing. Now, let's say I wanna put these 2 pieces together and make them stick. Right now, if I slap these together, they will stick. But the only reason they're sticking is because they are wet. But clay has to completely dry out before it can be fired. So this, once it's dried and turns that bone dry color, it's just gonna fall right apart, okay? So to make our clay stick, we have to do something called slipping and scoring. Slip you already know about. Slip is liquid clay, okay? And we'll be making that before this video, before you do this project, so we'll already have some made. And then scoring is essentially like cross hatching, okay? So scoring, I'm going to scratch, okay, one direction like this. Can you see that? All right, and then I'm gonna go the other direction, okay? So it looks like I made like little X's or plus signs. And look, I'm not being that gentle with it, okay? But I'm also not, you know, going all the way through my clay. I'm trying to get it a little roughed up, but not too roughed up. It's like ripping, okay? And I'm gonna do both pieces, always both, okay? All right, so here's my two pieces. I'm gonna stick together. They're both scored. Then I'm gonna take my slip. Now, I just use my fingers because, you know, I touch clay all day, but I did provide you with a paintbrush if you want to use the paintbrush. And you just want to get some of that goop, okay? You don't want to just use straight water. It needs to be that little bit of sludge, okay? And I always just slip one piece, okay? This is plenty of slip. If I add too much slip, well, then my project's going to turn into slip, okay? Because water breaks clay down. So we're trying to make something strong here. We don't want to overslip it. Okay, now let's say I want to get these pieces to stay together. Okay, one of your projects will be making like a little slab built container like this. So to do that, I'm gonna take this piece, all right, and I'm gonna press it into my other piece. Okay, and notice how I'm using some pressure here, okay? I'm not just letting it stick by touching it. I've got to press it together, okay? So now I can prop these up. Now I rush this, so my clay is still pretty wet. Once these pieces are a little leather hard, they're gonna hold their shape. But now they'll stick together once it dries. Okay, so that's called slipping and scoring. Every time you wanna attach two pieces of clay, you have to do that, okay? All right, I'm gonna pull them apart. Last but not least, we're gonna talk about coil building, okay? Here is a coil. It's essentially like a piece of rope, a snake. All right, I'm gonna take some of my clay. I'm gonna wedge it up, just like always. And here are two examples of coil built projects. So this is a bowl that's made out of coils that we spiraled and then pressed together and slipped and scored. And then here is a coil built cylinder, which you're also gonna be making. Can you see each level of the coils? Okay, so those are just made by stacking, slipping, and scoring each level and just stacking them up. All right. So I'm wedging my clay. All right, it's really important you wedge when you have coils, because as you roll it out, if it's not wedged together, it'll start like having air pockets and cracks and you'll be able to see it. So wedging again is very important. All right, let me get some of this stuff out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. There's too much going on here. All right, so when you're making a coil, it's really important to spread your fingers apart, okay? And you wanna get a full rotation in. Notice how this thing is getting hit on each side. I'm not just going from here to here, okay? Big rolls. Because if you do only go from here to here, you'll end up getting like a rectangular type of coil, and it's kind of annoying to work with. You can work with them, but it's kind of annoying. All right, so my coil is getting pretty big. You can't even see it on the camera anymore. So I'm just gonna slice this in half, and now I've got two coils. And I'm gonna keep rolling them out. You're gonna move your hands, and where it's thicker, you keep rolling out. If it's thin, then leave it alone and get the rest of it to be the same thickness. Now, how long I'm gonna keep rolling this for? Until it gets to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, that magic number. All right, so this is probably about, as thick as I wanna go, okay? We're right around 1/4 of an inch. You don't have to be exact, but just in that ballpark, okay? And now I can begin building with these. Get a little bit thinner right there. I'm gonna get 2 of them so I can show you how to attach them. And we're gonna use just a slab base, and I'm gonna cut out a circle, okay? And whenever you're working on things, you can always just kind of trace, and let's see if I can do this without really looking. All right, circle. All right, so I've kind of traced it. I didn't cut all the way through. So say I didn't like that, I can just take a little bit of slip and water, and and I can just kind of rub it away and just try it again. So now I'm gonna do it looking down and it will hopefully not be as bad of a circle. All right, so now I'm gonna actually puncture all the way through and cut out my base of my circle of my coil pot. Now, you don't always have to make coils to be round vessels, okay? You can have things that are triangular shaped and square shaped, octagon, whatever you want. All right, so here's my little base. I'm gonna slip and score all the edges. Okay. Scratch, 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 scoring this clay. All right, I'm gonna take my slip. I'm gonna put just a little bit of it on there, not a whole lot, because remember, we don't need to make it too wet. Then I need to score this as well. Now, if you do have a fork, like a plastic fork or an old fork at home that your parents don't mind you using, this is when you're gonna wanna use it. It's gonna go a lot quicker. I can just go and have 4 score marks made instead of going back and forth with my little needle tool or wooden stick, whatever you're using at home there. All right, I've got her scored. Okay, and now I'm gonna attach it. So if you wanna go straight up like a cylinder, then all I'm gonna do is place this coil directly on top, okay? I'm gonna get it kind of measured out. I'm gonna take my knife or needle tool, gonna slice that, and I'm gonna press those edges together and then press down a little bit. Okay, there's that. That's the first layer, okay? Now, if I wanna go out like a bowl, okay? Then, my next layer, again, you have to slip and score every single time. Otherwise, when it dries, your project's gonna fall apart. Okay, so this time, if I want to go out, I'm gonna place this slightly on the edge, okay? And always press down a little bit, but can you see how it's already starting to go out like a bowl would? Okay, and then if you want to go in like at the top of a vase, you're gonna put this on the inside. And now it's gonna start going in kind of like a volcano, okay? Or the top of your bottle or vase. Okay, that's hand building 101. Pinch, slab, coil.